So there is one major flaw about the DJI Neo that gives me a little bit of hesitation when recommending it, and it's the camera. This drone all around is so good. It's inexpensive, it's lightweight, it's fairly durable for what it is, and it has so much versatility. Like, you can have it autonomously track you. You can fly like a little FPV drone with goggles on, and you can fly like a traditional GPS drone to take photos and videos with a regular remote controller. But the camera is just not all that good. I'm actually surprised that DJI released a product like this with a camera that is this bad, considering they pride themselves on image quality. Like, when I filmed my first follow flight on my one wheel, I was completely convinced that I did something wrong when I looked back at the video on my computer. I thought I might have accidentally shot the video in 1080p, maybe I had the camera settings all messed up, but after double checking, I realized my settings were pushed to the max, being shot in the highest resolution, 4K. This here is just how the camera looks. Now look, I don't think the video that comes from the Neo is completely unusable. I think the colors are still good. Of course, you can still make out what's actually in the video. It also is nice and stable, considering it just has a one-axis gimbal and then electronically stabilizes the rest of the image. But I think it's so unlike DJI to release a product that punches below its weight class, right? For example, the Mini 4K, I just compared it to the Neo, and even though that's an entry-level drone that's only $300, I think the photos and videos it captures make it seem like it's worth more, makes it seem like it's better than just a $300 drone. Although when you look at the Neo, it makes it feel like it's right where it's at, a $200 entry-level drone. And I think everything else about it is so strong, and that's the one thing that holds me up. Like, this drone all around is so good, except for its camera. Despite having a lengthy resume of making cameras big and small, cheap and expensive, I think I'm just left feeling disappointed with the Neo's camera. DJI is a great camera company just as much as they're a great drone company. I mean, they make high-end cinema cameras. They make specialized thermal and low-light cameras that allow you to practically see in the dark on their enterprise drones. They make great little FPV cameras to see what's in front of bigger drones like the Inspire 3. They make everyday cameras that we're used to seeing on drones that take phenomenal images. They fit incredible specs into the tiny Mini 4 Pro camera. Despite the product line, they have had cameras that really push the boundaries in their own right. Now, I'll touch on the specs in a second, but first I want you to just see some example files from this camera from various times that I've been out shooting with it. These are some follow flights and manual flights, but everything that you're seeing here is captured in 4K at 30 FPS. Right off the bat, I can just tell you that this image is lacking in a lot of areas. Despite being a 4K file, the sharpness and clarity just isn't there. It seems like the camera is over-processing the image with an HDR effect that leaves the image looking off. To get really technical, the image feels like it just has way too much contrast. I'm someone that likes to have deep blacks in my photos and videos for a more punchy look, but this just isn't it. The image overall just looks muddy. If you want to check out some example video clips, I'll leave a link in the description to download some of those files for yourself to view on your own computer. Now, piggybacking off of that, let me show you the specs. You can kind of tell that this camera isn't as good as what is shipped in previous drones, with our 4K video maxing out at 30 FPS and the bitrate of the video being so low. With that said, this set of specs here really should produce an image that is way better than what we're getting. There really is no reason that it should look the way that it does. In fact, this same half-inch sensor has released in previous drones, and the image quality is way better than what we have with the Neo, so I wonder what's going on. You know, I kind of wonder why they didn't just use the Mini 4 Pro's camera in this case, because the size of them really isn't much different. I understand weight is a bit of a constraint here, but I'm not sure why they couldn't have just made adjustments to the hardware to give us an overall better looking image. I always think a drone is as good as its camera, and in this case, the Neo is being severely held back by the image quality. As I mentioned, this same camera hardware has been used on previous DJI drones, and they've gotten way better image quality out of it, which leads me to believe that the reason the Neo's image quality looks the way that it does is due to software, which I think is a good thing, but it's also a bad thing, because it kind of seems like they're intentionally limiting the Neo's camera, considering it's so strong in all these other areas. So the bad news is that we've got to just deal with this camera for now. Everything that we shoot is going to look the way that it does, and there really isn't anything we can do about it. The settings are pretty basic, so there isn't many things that we can change to get this image quality looking any better, and the low bitrate means there's not much room in post to change anything when you're doing your color grade. Now, the good news is a future firmware update might be able to fix this if this camera is in fact limited by software. I'm not sure if you remember when the original Mavic Pro first came out, people were going so crazy over the size of the drone that the image quality was kind of second in line. Everyone was so impressed with how compact it was and how it folded that any type of photos and videos it captured were usable. But then some people really started to use it, and some questions came up about the image quality so DJI released a firmware update that improved the image quality, and it actually worked. The video that was captured with the new firmware was significantly better. This same thing could happen to the Neo through a future firmware update if my suspicion is right that this camera is limited by software, and I've actually got an example to share with you that proves my theory. Recently, I went out to the Wheel of Misfortune just outside of Las Vegas to rip this drone around, and I really wish I came away with some better looking footage because this area looks way better through the camera of different drones that I've taken to this same spot. What I'm most interested in though is this super short clip that was captured when I was trying to take off from my hand. The motor started to spin, the auto recording started, and I quickly stopped the motors to instead answer a phone call coming in before I started to fly. Now this short clip is on loop, and what do you notice? Just looking at this frame as it keeps playing over and over, the image quality seems to gradually add contrast right within the camera. Once I got back and dumped off all the video from the Neo, this is actually the clip that interested me the most because you can almost see the image quality becoming worse right before your eyes through the software. Let me freeze this frame right here where I started the video. Aside from the image quality looking not so sharp, the dynamic range is actually pretty good. If we however skip to the last frame of this short clip, you can see that the blacks look way deeper, kind of making the video look worse than it did in the very beginning. Quickly jumping back and forth really highlights this and just overall leaves me scratching my head. So this is by far the biggest flaw when it comes to the Neo, as everything else about it is so strong. It is such a versatile drone, and I think that we're currently set up for another Mini 1 and Mini 2 type of situation. If you remember, back when DJI dropped the Mini 1, it was a pretty revolutionary drone for its time considering how much tech was fit into a sub 250 gram drone. The camera, however, was severely limited to 2.7K video, which led to a softer looking image than we'd been used to, with basically every camera that we own now shooting in 4K. Well, don't you know, the next year the Mini 2 came out that looked exactly the same. It was identical hardware, but this camera could now miraculously shoot 4K video at 30 frames per second. This left myself and others wondering why the Mini 1 couldn't just shoot 4K. If it was literally the same exact camera, it seemed like DJI was limiting that first drone through software so that the next drone seemed like a bigger upgrade than it was. With that said, I think the similar thing is in store here for the Neo. I think that Neo 1 was a great proof of concept. It has an okay camera at best, while everything else is so strong about it. And Neo 2 is going to have the same form factor with slight upgrades, but the camera is going to see a big upgrade, which is something I'd love because this drone is so fun, it's so versatile, but the image quality just really needs some work. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on the Neo's camera down below, and as always, I'll talk to you later. Peace.